I'm a director of PCI Partners, a specialist insolvency firm, and just a quick plug, if there is anything that we can do or advice that we can offer to any of our network members, please reach out to us. We're more than happy to have those discussions. And we welcome you all today, and thank you for the time that you've taken to attend our webinar session. So Andrew is a former insolvency practitioner. He joined EDX in 2012 when the PPSR first commenced, and so it's been around with us for quite some time. He understands both the PPSR and also the thought processes of insolvency practitioners, being a very senior insolvency practitioner himself. So he's well placed to protect your clients' interests, and as a liquidator, I know firsthand the difficulties that some people actually face when they get the PPSR registration wrong. A little bit about EDX. It's a one-stop shop for the PPSR. That's all that they actually do. So it's founded in New Zealand 20 years ago when similar legislation was introduced there, and EDX has created its own unique PPSR registration software called ESIS. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Andrew and welcome you all once again. Thank you.
I can't actually hear any speaking at the moment, Andrew.
Is that better?
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. Look, again, thanks for everyone for attending. Interestingly, this has been a pretty large turnout for this presentation. Often when I present on the PPSR, I may find it exciting, but not everyone else also does find it as exciting as I do. So often the number of attendees can be a bit sparse. But I think today's turnout is just, which is large, is really, it's just a reflection now of the times that we are living in. I think there's going to be next year a tsunami of insolvencies, and while time still allows, there are businesses and advisors who are seeking to protect themselves as best they can. Being armed with correct PPSR registration will form a part of that critical protection strategy. But there's a time limit to this strategy. Register and register now will be your best defence. So just the aim of today, look, it's only really 30 minutes, and all I want to do is, while time still allows, identify which of your clients will benefit from registering on the PPSR, and you can advise them then to register. And that's really the whole point of today's session. No one is expecting you to be an expert in the PPSR. I've not seen one accounting firm that advises in this space, so don't feel bad if you don't. And around 4 in 5 legal firms, I would say, also avoid this space. There's little money to be made in advising on the PPSR unless you really do have hundreds of clients. And most practices just can't justify that investment to become an expert for what will at the end of the day be a meagre return. So most of my clients ended up being accountants and lawyers and trade credit reference associations and anyone who's got a client that they think would benefit from registering on the PPSR. So just at the end of this session, all I want to do is put you in a position of being able to identify which of your clients would benefit from registering, and then you advise them accordingly. This is not a technical session, which will be pleasing a lot of people, but nonetheless, I'm happy at the end of this to answer any technical questions that you may have. Just I thought I'd throw this in because it's been very topical in the last couple of days. The National AICM conference is currently being held online, and this is the magazine that comes out each month, and this is the introduction from the President, and you may not be able to read it, but I've just highlighted PPSR will be extremely important in securing your firm's interests. So there's a theme. If you go to page 65 of the current AICM October magazine, take security where you can, and again, register a security interest over the company on the PPSR. In the last 2 days, I've attended by Zoom 6 different sessions on the PPSR. It is really, really topical what's going on. So what is the PPSR? In 2012, 50 state and federal registers were combined into one public notice board, which is the PPSR. If you have an interest in an asset, this is your one-stop shop for registering that interest. It kicks in when a company becomes insolvent. Without correct registration, your client will most likely lose their asset. So that's what it is. It's a register for your clients to record an interest in an asset, and it kicks in when the customer who's either bought it or they have hired it has gone broke. How big is the PPSR? Well, just March earlier this year, there's over 10 million registrations. So people are clearly embracing this and they are registering. The most of the work that I would do would be in other goods. There's motor vehicles, because you can register a motor vehicle individually. A GSA is the old fixed inflating charge. So as you can see, there are a lot of registrations on the PPSR and it is being embraced. I've been doing this now full-time for 8 years, and with absolutely no empirical evidence to justify this statistic whatsoever, I'll just pull a figure out of the air to probably make the point. I think even today, less than 50% of businesses register, and of those that do, more than half that get it wrong. Only this month, we had our first time we've ever seen anyone do a registration, and a whole bunch of registrations, and they got it done correctly. They actually did them all without a mistake, and we rang the bell, first time ever. It's hard to do. So this is really just what I want to get into you. As advisors to your clients, whether you're an accountant or a lawyer, there are 3 critical types of clients that you'll have who will benefit from registering on the PPSR. So I just want to go over those 3 types so you can recognise, hey, that's one of my clients. I understand that they need to benefit, and I will then advise them accordingly. Most of my work is this category. If you have a client that sells goods on credit, which is retention of title, that's the #1 client that I register. And I have clients with 50,000 registrations in this category. So they're selling to a customer on credit. They've got trading terms with retention of title clause. Each individual customer needs to be registered. And the benefits of registering. Well, first of all, I might mention the disadvantages of not registering. If you don't register, Stephen at PCI will be I shouldn't say very happy, but he won't be disappointed, let's say, because then the only thing you can really do at that point is probably attend a creditors meeting with Stephen and vote for his fees. Your ability to try and get paid from the administration, because you are not secured because you didn't register, will be severely hampered. So what are the benefits of registering? There's probably 4 main benefits that I have clients who register, and each of them might register just for one of the 4. The first one is the most common. If you register on the PPSR, your customer goes broke, you have an ability to collect your unpaid stock, or hopefully even be paid by the insolvency practitioner. Because often the insolvency practitioner will trade on a business, they'll see your registration, they'll work out you've got 50,000 of unpaid goods, and they'll just pay you the 50,000 because they will want to use them themselves. Or they could even say, no, we don't want them, please return them. But at least the registration got you to do that. The second reason people can register is, let's say you're owed $100,000, but there's only $50,000 worth of unpaid stock there. So what's happened to the other 50,000? It's been sold by the customer. And if that stock you can trace is still in trade debtors when Stephen was appointed, then you can actually be paid out of trade debtors. So it's 2 bites of the cherry. Paid from unpaid, get money from unpaid stock, or even be paid from trade debtors. The third reason, and I have got an asterisk to say we are waiting for some case law on this, but you largely get immunity from an unfair preference claim. So if you've registered, you've been paid in the 6 months prior to the company tipping over, you are in a far stronger position to avoid an unfair preference claim if you have registered. Now, the asterisk I have there is simply because there are a few ifs and buts to that statement. We're waiting for some case law, but funnily enough, after 8 years, I'm still waiting for a definitive case of a liquidator versus a creditor as to what the rules for being a PPSR registered creditor and how much you can be, how much immunity you do get. So it's interesting there hasn't even been, to me, a liquidator hasn't really taken on a customer who's claimed to be a secured creditor because they've registered. So it seems to be pretty strong at avoiding an unfair preference claim. The fourth reason, and I have lots of clients in this category, you will be paid when a business is sold because you've registered on the PPSR. What that simply means is that we're now living in a world where someone wants to buy a business and they'll say, I'm happy to buy it, but I want to know I'm getting clear title to the assets that I'm buying. So you must remove all registrations prior to me settling. And that's what happens. And so what you find now is usually the vendor will actually get rid of all the registrations, and the only way to get rid of a registration is to ring you and say, hey, please remove your registration. The client will say, sure, I will. Please pay $14,560 into this account and I'll remove the registration. And that's what happens. So you even get paid before the business is sold. We have a saying at EDX, you register on the PPSR, you now have a seat at the negotiating table with the insolvency practitioner for the next 7 years. You don't register, you have no seat at the negotiating table. So retention of title, if you've got clients selling goods on credit, they are the #1 type of customer that I would protect. There's only 3 main types of clients. This is the second one. This is the vicious one, the long-term hire. If you have clients who have a business of being in long-term hire, they are hiring out their assets, their vehicles, their excavators, forklifts, and the term of the agreement is for more than 2 years, then they must register on the PPSR, because if the client goes broke, they have lost the asset that they've hired. So even though they own it, it can be lost to the insolvency practitioner. And that gets a bit vague as to what's a 2-year hire, what's not a 2-year hire, is a monthly hire that continues 2 years, and it does get a little bit messy, but we've got clients, just register and you'll never have to worry about it. I'll put the example of Forge for $50 million, and it's just worth, here's just one of many examples I could throw in. GE hired a $50 million piece of equipment to Forge in WA for a 4-year period. After the hire had gone for 1 month, just 1 month, which means I dare say that Forge hadn't even made one payment to GE, Forge went into insolvency. There was a court case. Who owned this $50 million equipment that GE owned and had actually just hired to Forge? And the court case was pretty simple, because GE didn't spend $6 registering on the PPSR. Mentha, as the insolvency practitioners to Forge, are now the proud owners of $50 million of equipment. So one $6 registration of GE would have got back their $50 million equipment that they own. So long-term hire I do regard as really vicious, and you need to register up front, not later, if you're going to get all the benefits. The third type of client that you will be advising, and I certainly do a lot of work in, is what we call the typical 2-entity asset protection structure. And there'll be accountants watching now who have set their clients up this way. They've set their clients up so one company owns the assets and another entity trades with those assets. And it was set up there largely for often a number of reasons. There could be tax reasons, but certainly asset protection would be one of them. i.e., if the trading entity fails, then at least the assets will be safe in a separate entity. Now, that's an asset protection structure that's been going on for the last 50 years. I've rarely seen a business that has a lot of motor vehicles that doesn't have an entity asset protection structure. The vehicles that are being used in the business are actually owned by a separate asset owning entity. What your clients need to know is that it is no longer asset protection if it's not PPSR compliant. So what I do, and that's, if we go back to the earlier slide, that is more than a 2-year hire. In fact, it's probably a 20-year hire for some businesses. So they do need to register. If you've got clients, what is of a concern is that the accountants and lawyers watching may well have clients who they set up with this 2-asset protection structure. They advised them it was asset protection, but right now there is no asset protection. If the trading entity fails, I guarantee the insolvency practitioner will keep all of the assets owned by the separate asset owning entity. So again, that's pretty vicious. When you get to hire like this, it can be very, very vicious. So, all right, what does it cost to register? Typically, I do 7-year registrations for $6 for each customer. And I use the Forge as an example. A $6 investment by by GE would have protected $50 million of equipment. That's $6 over 7 years. GE could have had multiple hires on multiple different hire arrangements. The same one $6 registration would have covered every single separate hire over that 7-year period. So that's it. You find the customer, you spend $6, you rest easy for the next 7 years. That's pretty cheap. And I know you might have got 1,000 customers. Yeah, you've got to multiply it by well, there's $6 for 1,000, so there's 6,000. But it's buying you 7 years of protection, even for 1,000 customers. So if it's so cheap, why isn't everyone registering? And if I've made the outrageous claim that even those that do half are getting it wrong, why aren't they seeking expert advice? And I'm going to mention these things just so that you'll probably encounter them yourself as an expert advisor to your client. So why aren't your clients registering? Oh, someone's taken control. Sorry, someone's taken control of my presentation.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Share your screen again, Andrew.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, someone just took control of it.
That looks better. I think it's coming back up. Here we go.
Yeah, okay then. Right. So, let's make sure I'm up to there. Yeah, okay. So, the question is, why aren't your clients registering if it is so cheap? And I do mention this because I just want you to be aware you'll get kickback from your clients. Oh, reasons they can't do it. Just be aware of it so that you have a predetermined answer anyway. So typically, this is what I come across. Why aren't they registering? $6, 7 years. First of all, your clients are going to have a go at doing this themselves, and you need to advise them it's too hard, don't do it. And if anyone here watching has been on the PPSR website, God bless it, the most complicated website in the world, it's the #1 thing that gets me work. People will start to try and have a go themselves, but to get through that PPSR website and do a registration is difficult. So so you have clients, they'll have a go at doing themselves and they won't get it very far on the PPSR website. Another reason they're not registering is they don't really understand the benefits, and that's where you step in. There are not just benefits, but there's disadvantages in not registering. Another reason is that some are reluctant to spend dollars on more government red tape. Oh, here we go. The government's given us more red tape. No, I'm not going to do this. I've had enough of government and spending money. So just be prepared and say, look, it's cheap over 7 years. I have a lot of people who say, I don't believe you, Andrew. You don't understand. I own the asset. How many times someone said to me, Andrew, I don't need to register even though I'm hiring the asset because I own it and I can prove I own it. And I tell them, just throw 1,000 years of property ownership out the window and start again, because I promise you, even though you've owned it, you've now lost it forever. Some will say, I have trade credit insurance. I'm covered. Why do I need PPSR? One thing that's interestingly come out of the AICM conference is the constant complaints that the goalposts have shifted with these trade credit insurers. What were they could insure yesterday, they can't insure a lot of customers today. The trade credit insurers know the tsunami of insolvency is coming. Not only are they reducing the number of customers they will allow to be covered, they are also reducing the level of coverage that you can get. But in addition to that, trade credit insurance is very, very expensive, and every claim you make will only increase the fee for next year. So by reducing any claims, by getting at least something back on your PPSR registration, will improve the premium, no doubt, for the following year. And my favourite, the reason they don't need to register is I know bikies. And it was the glitterazzi of Campbellfield, a mobile crane operator. He had a mobile crane worth $2.8 million in Outback WA. He said, Andrew, I don't need to register, I know bikies. And I said, well, I don't know the going rate to send 20 bikies over to WA, pick up a crane and then bring it back to Melbourne. But if it's more than $6, and I'm guessing it is, I haven't seen the latest scale of fees from a bikie gang, I think you're better off spending $6 on the customer, and sensibly they paid the $6 on the customer. Also, just be aware of some of the errors that your clients are making. These are the typical errors I see. For your client to register on the PPSR and for it to stand up, they are going to need a written agreement. It's amazing how many can't find written trading terms, they can't find the hire agreement, they can't find anything. Or with many country clients I deal with, Dave knows the drill. Dave knows what the hire is about. And so, well, it's no good because we're not dealing with Dave anymore. We're dealing with McGrath Nickel or PCI, and they're the ones. So unless you've got a written agreement, your registration by itself will not stand up. People fall down on registering themselves as a secured party group. People get confused between what's a transitional and a non-transitional registration. People get intimidated by the questions. They don't select the PIMSI box. Now, you will hear the expression PIMSI, and you'll sound like an expert if you always know what the PIMSI is. And the PIMSI is this. In its very technical sense, the PIMSI is the super duper priority. That's what it is. You beat everybody. You beat the liquidator. You beat the bank. You beat the employee entitlements. But you must select it. So people don't fill in the form correctly. A late registration, the time clock's ticking. You agree trading terms, you start a hire, the clock is ticking, and you may lose the PIMSI forever if you don't register up front. So you've got to be very careful about the timing as much as your registration. Look, the using the wrong identifier for the grantor, I think most people would have heard of one steel versus all leasing, and again, Cordamentha did well again, but it's simply this: all leasing hired a $23 million piece of equipment to one steel. It was on hire, all leasing owned it. The only mistake that all leasing made is they registered one steel by its ABN instead of its ACN. That's it. They had a hire agreement, they registered on time, they ticked all the boxes. The court case said this $23 million machine that all leasing own is now owned by Cordamentha because they used an ABN instead of an ACN. Now, that's a pretty small slip up, but that's how easy it can be to make a fatal error. People often register the wrong customer, they're confused who the customer is, they get the wrong ABN, ACN, and One Steel was the Arium mob in South Australia. They had 132 companies in that group. Pretty easy to get the wrong customer. There are incorrect type of registration. There's 32 different types of registrations. You've got to pick the best one out of 32 to register against. And the motor vehicle other goods, the definitions have changed as to what a motor vehicle is. It gets difficult. Then with many of the clients, they've got data management. Each registration gets a password. Who's been registered? Who's not been registered? They forget to renew after 7 years. I'm doing a lot of work now in renewals, and it's trying to work out who's renewed, who's not, who do we want. So there is a lot of data management involved, and a lot of my clients, like everyone else, has staff changes, and the expert in the PPSR goes, no more registrations get done. So, and if you're late with the registrations in the future, you've lost much of its intended purpose. So again, these are the sort of errors that clients make, and it's not their fault. It's the complexity of the legislation, really, that to me is the problem. So what can you do as their advisor? And again, I just wanted to stress, don't expect to be a PPSR expert. It's not worth it, but just identify for your client if they are at risk, and then advise them that they should register and don't try and do it yourself. It's not a do-it-yourself exercise. I'd advise them by email because the following 2 points on this slide is something I see it all the time. Many of my clients come after suffering a horrible loss, and they finally decide $6 in fact is better than suffering any more horrible losses. And what I've seen is that clients I've been to, if they have registered and got some monies back because they registered in the PPSR and their accountant lawyer advised them to register, they are really grateful to their accountant lawyer on advising them to do it. But I've also, on the switch side, I've been to see customers who've lost an asset and they really complain when they lose assets saying, why didn't you tell me that I had to register? So they can often complain to you. The reason I've got let's send it by email is that you'll advise them to do this, register on the PPSR. It'll be 3 years before one of these customers tips over. No one remembers 3 years ago you saying, oh, I think you should register. So by putting it in writing, you've got a written evidence. And not only did I tell you to register, I explained why you should register and told you what to do, and you didn't do it. No one's going to dispute a written email. So if anyone's interested, I do have, thanks for watching, I do have, there's my email address, and I can give you for whether it's a retention of title, long-term hire, or the two-company asset protection structure. I have emails you can send, 2 paragraphs with a flyer, what they should be doing. You've protected yourself as their advisor, and when they have pushback and when you chase up with them, did you register? Be prepared for some, be forewarned with some of the reasons that you'll get as to why they haven't been registering on the PPSR. That's about half an hour. The rule of thumb is anything longer than half an hour on the PPSR does run the danger of people falling asleep, so I'm aware of that through experience. I used to do what Stephen did as an insolvency practitioner, so I've had my level of excitement, and Stephen will tell you it is exciting, but I've had that, and now all I do is protect your clients by making sure they're registered and registered correctly on the PPSR. So today was just purely, this is what to expect. These are the type of clients you can be advising. And as I said, if you need an email, the generic one to send to the different types of clients, email me and I'll send them to you. And that is probably it. I didn't want to make this a technical session because it can go for hours, but I am happy to answer any technical question that anyone has, having said that. Stephen?
Yes, if anyone's got some questions, just unmute your microphone and ask, or send a comment through. So, any questions for Andrew?
I've just got a quick question.
Yes.
Great presentation, by the way. It's pretty cool that you can make PPSR exciting.
It's a tough one. Make no mistake. It's one of the toughest gigs in town.
No, I believe it. Question with regards to long-term hire. You mentioned that you can do one registration that will cover you for 7 years, regardless of, like, if you were to on hire something for a period of 2 years and then get it back and then on hire it to another customer. Yes. You don't need to do another registration at that point, even though it's a different on hire agreement.
All right. The devil is in the detail. In summary, that is correct. So if you have depends what type of asset we're talking about. Are you talking about a motor vehicle or plant and equipment?
Oh, like plant and equipment or trucks.
Yeah, okay. Well, plant and equipment, you can't register individually. So there's only one type, what we call the generic. You do it for 7 years. You register that customer and you hire plant and equipment to that customer for 2.5 years. If that equipment comes back and then you hire different equipment to that same customer, you don't have to do a new registration. That old registration from 2.5 years ago will protect you for all future hires. And if you have 15 different hires at the same time to that same customer, that one $6 registration will be sufficient. The key will be make sure it's renewed at the 7-year mark, and the PPSR will not send you a reminder. Now, if you're one of our clients, we would send you a reminder, but people are forgetting that they have to renew. When I started in 2012, no one was thinking of 2019. And here we are in 2020, and many more clients are coming to me saying, look, now it's just a bridge too far, now trying to even renew all these registrations. So, but certainly answer the question, yeah, one registration for plant and equipment will cover you for multiple hires, as many as you want. But if that equipment comes in and goes to a different customer, you do have to register the different customer. You're not registering the equipment, you are registering the customer.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions for Andrew?
Chris Rowlands, I'd just like to say we've just had a few technical difficulties along the way. We have recorded this, so I can certainly send a link to anyone who would like a link. And a copy of the recording, and also we can send on a copy of your presentation, I think, Andrew. That's fine?
That's fine.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, Andrew, well, look, thank you very much for your presentation today. I think that there is a lot of lessons It is a really complex area, even for insolvency practitioners. It's a really complex area that we get involved in basically most liquidations that we do, and it's fraught with danger if it's not done properly. So I think that those lessons and the experience that you've got is well founded. It is really a difficult area, that's for sure. Again, thank you for attending today. We've got our next session coming up in a couple of weeks' time, in which we're talking to Judo Bank about how to deal with financiers post COVID, and what sort of discussions that clients should be having with their financiers now, and how to actually get finance. So watch out for invitations that we sent out in the next few days in relation to that session. Again, thank you for your time. These are short, sharp sessions, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again.